So then Abigail meets with Scott, another one of her owl patients, and he and his wife tell Abby that they want her to hypnotize him. You know, because it went so well the last time. Abigail brings her friend Abel in to observe, and Scott sees pretty much the same thing Tommy saw. Unlike Tommy, he's more willing to talk about it.
I saw them.
Who's them?
They're not from here.
What do you mean?
They're from Canada. They wouldn't stop talking about hockey. It was awful. I can't fucking stand hockey! So Scott goes on to describe what sounds suspiciously like an alien abduction. Something comes into his room speaking a strange language. He remembers being taken someplace, but can't remember the details. After he and his wife leave, Abby's assistant comes in looking quite frightened and plays a recording Abby made that she'd asked her to transcribe earlier. Abby is quite surprised when she hears something on the tape that she doesn't remember recording.
And worse, unsolved, like Will, and
This is about the same reaction I had when I saw the band Lordi in concert. Adding to this mysterious recording is the fact that Abigail finds a scar on her shoulder that she can't explain. More on that later. After listening to the tape and trying fruitlessly to figure out what the strange voice was saying, she looks at a book on the ancient Sumerian language that her late husband was reading and finds a note inside with the author's phone number. She calls the author, Dr. Aboloa Odusami, again an alias, played by Hakim K. Kazim, and he tells her that he spoke with Will in the past and is willing to help her in any way he can. He flies out to Nome and tells Abigail that he's certain the language he heard is Sumerian. The entire lexicon hasn't been translated, and while he is able to pick out a few words on the tape, basically all he can determine is that the speaker is not happy. No shit. Abigail mentions the voice doesn't sound quite human. Abel is immediately skeptical, but Dr. Odusami tells them that several ancient Sumerian relics have been dug up with drawings and sculptures that depict what appear to be rocket ships and men in spacesuits. While he doesn't claim to believe in this, he throws out the theory that beings from another world may have come to this planet thousands of years ago and were worshipped as gods by the people. Okay, if this turns into another AVP movie, I'm out of here. At this time, Abigail gets a call from Scott's wife, who tells her Scott is on the verge of totally losing his mind. He hasn't become homicidal. Yet. But he can't get the visions out of his head. They go to his house and find him in bed, and Abigail notices a scar on his arm not unlike the one on her shoulder. Unsurprisingly, Scott doesn't remember how it got there. He begs her to help him remember what happened, and Abigail volunteers to hypnotize him again. You know, because it worked so well the last time they tried it. God, it's really hard to feel sympathy for these people when they're just asking for it. Abel sets up the camera to document it, and Abby puts him under. What happens next is actually kind of freaky.
Scott?
When it's all said and done, Scott is paralyzed. Obviously, the tape doesn't show us much. It looks like Scott starts to levitate, but then the video is distorted. But for some odd reason, the audio, recorded by the same device, is just fine. Oh, how goddamn convenient. A little later, August comes to the Tyler residence. When Abby can't explain what happened, he decides to arrest her, but Abel interjects. He gives a pretty half-assed explanation of what happened, but nevertheless, he convinces August not to take her away from her children. Instead, she is placed under house arrest with 24-hour surveillance. At this point, we get another interview segment with Dr. Tyler, who tells us that there have been an unusually high number of unsolved murders and disappearances in Nome. Even the FBI has dropped in from time to time, but no one can figure out what's going on. She also explains the different classifications of alien encounters, which is where we get the title of the movie.
an encounter of the first kind, that's when you see a UFO. The second kind is when you see evidence of it. Crop circles, radiation. The third kind is when you make contact. But the fourth kind, that one, is when they abduct you.
The fifth kind is what we also refer to as second base. But we're not going to get into that because this movie is already disturbing enough as it is. That night, promptly at 3:33 a.m., the officer watching the Tyler residence spots something in the sky. On his police cruiser's dash cam, we get a brief glimpse of what looks like a UFO. Once again, the aliens appear to be camera shy, but we can hear the deputy describing the UFO pulling the Tylers out of the house. The sheriff shows up shortly thereafter and finds Ronnie and Abigail, but no Ashley. He asks Abigail what happened, and she tells him that the aliens came and took Ashley into the sky. August isn't about to put up with this shit, and he orders his deputies to take Ronnie into protective custody. Abigail protests, but strangely enough, Ronnie seems perfectly comfortable with it. Apparently, he's not buying the UFO story either. With no one else to turn to and still under house arrest, Abby calls up Abel and Awoloa and tells them that her only option left is to try to confront the aliens directly. So she asked Abel to hypnotize her one more time. Because it worked so well. Oh, fuck it. These people deserve what they get. So while Awoloa holds the camera, Abel puts her under, and they go back to the night when she made the recording of herself screaming. She falls asleep, but then she wakes up and sees an owl.
It's smiling.
I don't like it when it
smiles.
Well, since that should be physically impossible, I don't think I'd like it either. Then she starts remembering the abduction. We never see the actual aliens, but we do see their tools. And from the camera angle, it looks like we're about to get the traditional alien anal probe, but they're just drilling her shoulder, which would explain the scar she picked up. They also try to reenact a certain scene from Evil Dead. That's creepy. Then Abigail starts convulsing and the video distorts, which means it's time for one last message from the aliens. At this point, Abby goes limp, and Abel and Awoloa rush to check on her. But then they both spot something off camera, and when it finally stops distorting, everyone has apparently vanished. I'd like to feel sorry for these people, I really would. But they just waved a flag in front of a bull! What did they think was gonna happen?